Well, good morning, Doug here with the blog update. This week I want to look at Joshua chapters 5 and 6 and a couple of things that are going on there just to give you a basic overview. And I have a handy dandy list here and I'll just look down at it and communicate accordingly. So if you have Joshua open and you've read through it, I'm just going to make a few comments on that. So number one, basically what's going on here is you've got the people who've just crossed over the Jordan River, and all the sons have been circumcised, and now they're turning their sights on taking down Jericho, or walking in obedience as the Lord takes down the city of Jericho. Really their first conquest or a show of the Lord's favor in the Promised Land at this point. And so that's what's going to happen in chapter 5 and 6. They're going to prepare to go into Jericho. Then in chapter 6 they're going to actually take down or see Jericho and the walls fall. So here are the comments I have made about all this. First, notice that all of this is taking place in the month of Nissan, Nissan, for those of you who want to Wikipedia that. Nissan is the first month in the ecclesiastical or ecclesiastical calendar of the Hebrew people. And just some fun facts about Nissan, if you want to play Jeopardy later on and know this. Creation, the act of creation, is said to have happened in the month of Nissan, since it's the first month in the Hebrew calendar. All of the patriarchs died in the month of Nissan. The Passover every year happens in the month of Nissan. And just so you know, for the Roman calendar, the Gregorian calendar rather, that we celebrate in the West, that's essentially somewhere like March, April-ish. So we'll be getting to the month of Nissan here in just a little bit. So Easter typically happens, Passover in that month. So you can think the Christian calendar Easter, but that's really the first month in the Jewish calendar Nissan. So Passover happens in this month. It's also important to note that Jesus was crucified, dead, buried, and raised from the dead in the month of Nissan. So it's an important month theologically, biblically, and for our settings. Everything that's happening thus far in Joshua, the fall of Jericho, happens in the month of Nissan. And accordingly, you see that the people, once they've crossed over the Jordan, they celebrate the Passover on the 14th day, actually the night of the 14th day there, which would have been per Jewish tradition. The second big thing I would point to is the fact that the people have stopped eating manna, and the Bible says that they begin eating the fruit of the land. This is both a literal statement as well as a metaphorical one, because they are literally eating the fruit that they find in the Promised Land. Manna stops appearing. They've been under the practice of waking up every morning and seeing manna for the first 6 days of the week, and then they gather up twice as much as they need on the 6th day so that they can have a Sabbath. They've been doing this practice for a while, all through the wilderness, and manna stops. And so it's a supernatural event. The people recognize no more manna. They can now eat of the fruit of the land. The metaphorical or the kind of a deeper theological truth there is that they are now about to participate in the fruit of the Promised Land, which was promised to Abraham. They're finally, the promise has culminated to this point in time. So that's an important thing. The third thing, notice at the very end of chapter 5, Joshua receives instructions, or rather has a moment with this angel, who is an angel of the army of the Lord, and there's the same kind of language used that was used with Moses, specifically at the burning bush and other places where Joshua's leadership is affirmed. He has to take off his feet because he's standing on holy ground and all of this stuff. So, not take off his feet, I'm sorry. He needs to take off his shoes because his feet are touching holy ground. So that happens. And the last thing here, particularly with respect to the walking around of the city, there's nothing really magical that we're to take from this text, that these people walk around the city for 7 days and blow trumpets and the walls fall down, meaning it's not like there was this formula that the Lord gave them, that if they did that for any other city after that the walls would fall in the city. What this is supposed to indicate to us is that there was a ritual involved in this process. And ritual, specifically in the Old Testament, ritual was always meant to indicate that divine agency is working. And so what we're to understand here is that even in this process where they're walking around the city, this is God bringing down Jericho. It's not the people bringing down Jericho, as the spies seem to understand in Joshua 2 when they're telling Rahab, if you cheat us on your end of the deal, there's going to be blood on your head, because they envisioned this very violent overthrow, and the Lord's basically affirming and reaffirming to them that no, he's going to be the one who takes down the city, because he's the one who's leading them into the promised land, and he's the one who is fulfilling the promise that he made to Abraham. So I would just encourage you that this is a very God-centered text here. God is constantly trying to remind the people here, and then us as readers, that he's the one who's at the center of history. He's the one who's driving everything. And so we worship him accordingly. That's all I have for today. We'll check you out next week.